He told me to kill the family in the house across the road. A man, a woman, 2 kids hiding under a blanket. And I lowered my rifle. That single act, that one breath of hesitation changed everything. You don't forget a moment like that. The heat, the sand, the smell of gun oil, and the sound of your own heartbeat screaming louder than the gunfire around you. He was my commanding officer, the man I trusted with my life. When he gave the order, he didn't even blink. His voice was calm, almost casual, like asking someone to pass the salt at dinner. "They're not civilians," he said. "They're threats." But I saw their faces. I knew what they were. I knew who the real threat was. My finger froze on the trigger. Every cell in my body screamed to obey, but something inside me refused. In war, disobedience can get you killed, sometimes faster than a bullet. But that day, I decided I'd rather die with my conscience than live as a murderer. And what happened next? No training, no discipline, no battlefield could have prepared me for it. And the last thing will shock you. We met in mud and smoke before we knew the sound of our own names. In basic, they shoved us through obstacle courses until our knees gave out, and he was the one who always offered a hand without looking for thanks. We shared canned coffee at dawn and swapped stories about hometown bars we swore we'd open one day. Once, during a night exercise, a training charge went wrong, and I was blinded by the flash. He crawled through the wire and dragged me to a ditch, pressed a bandage against my leg with steady hands while the world spun. I remember thinking then, if he could keep his head with my blood on his palms, he could keep mine in a storm. Leadership clung to him like armor. Officers took note. Men followed because following felt safe. He had that low, sure voice that cut through panic, and a way of standing that made you believe retreat wasn't an option. He fixed radios, calibrated scopes, and joked when the rest of us wanted to scream. In the chow lines, he'd share rations without making a show of it. In the mess tent, he'd listen when a private needed to say a name aloud. Those small things built trust the way mortar builds walls, slow, invisible, then suddenly whole. So when orders came later that bent the rules we swore to, it felt like betrayal by gravity. Impossible and absolute. I'd given him my life once, and because of that debt, his voice still held weight when he spoke the words that would haunt me. But there was something in his eyes, something I never learned to read. The air in Iraq always changed at dusk. It thickened, like the whole desert held its breath. That evening, we moved toward the village under a bruised sky, the kind that turned sand into molten gold and shadows into traps. Our orders were clear: reconnaissance only, no engagement unless fired upon. Simple words that never meant what they sounded like. The convoy stopped half a mile out. We moved in on foot, rifles low, helmets slick with sweat. The radio hissed every few seconds, bursts of static, distant chatter. The village looked asleep, women drawing water, kids chasing a ball through the dust, men smoking on doorsteps. Too normal, too quiet. He was leading point, scanning rooftops through his scope. "Keep eyes on windows," he said. His tone was flat, professional, but I heard the weight underneath it. My pulse matched the rhythm of my boots. Each step felt heavier than the last. We reached the main street. The smell of kerosene and cooked rice mixed with something metallic. Gun oil. A radio tone clicked twice in my headset. Code for possible contact. I froze. He didn't. He looked at the house across the road, the one with the curtain slightly moving. "Clear that house," he said. "Now." No gunfire yet, no proof. Just a feeling crawling down my spine that something wasn't right. The sun slipped lower, washing the village in orange light, and in that glow I realized this mission wasn't about reconnaissance anymore. It was about obedience. His voice came through the radio first, calm, clipped, practiced. Team Alpha, clear the house. No witnesses. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. Maybe static, maybe the wind. But then he said it again, louder this time, his tone sharp like a blade. You heard me. Take them out. The house across the street sat still, curtains swaying in the fading light. Through the cracked window, I saw movement. A woman clutching a child, a man trying to pull them deeper inside. They weren't armed. They weren't insurgents. They were just terrified. My heart pounded so hard it drowned out everything else. The air thickened. Even the dust felt heavier. I pressed the radio to my ear. Sir, repeat that order. We don't have confirmation of hostiles. His answer came quick, impatient. Intel says the family's harboring militants. You follow the order or you put the whole squad at risk. Do it. I froze. That same voice had once pulled me from a blast zone, dragged me to safety while mortars fell like rain. I used to think it was the sound of leadership. But now, all I heard was something hollow, the voice of a man who'd decided fear was stronger than truth. My rifle felt like it weighed 100 pounds. My finger trembled near the trigger. The woman's eyes met mine through the glass, wide, pleading, human. Behind me, someone whispered, "What are we doing?" And I had no answer. He barked through the headset again, furious now. "You disobey, and I'll court-martial you myself. Do it or die." The words sliced through me. That wasn't an order anymore. That was a line being crossed, and I realized then I wasn't the one who'd lost his humanity. He was. My hands were shaking, not from fear of dying, but from the weight of the choice. The house across the street held faces, not targets. The radio hissed like a taunt. He repeated the order, voice flat and final. "Clear them. No witnesses." Behind me, my team shifted, boots scraping loose gravel, breaths loud in the close dusk. Somebody swallowed. Somebody else looked away. I lifted the rifle slowly, each motion measured because there was no room for mistaken movement. I did not aim at the window. I did not aim at the woman's shoulder or the child's small head. I turned the barrel toward the street where he stood, framed by the dying sun and the outline of his uniform. He looked back at me, eyes sharp, and for a second, the man who had pulled me from a blast was only a silhouette. "I won't do this," I said. My voice sounded small in the canyon of that moment, but it was honest. The words hit harder than the recoil of a gun. He barked, the sound snapping like a whip. "Then you're a traitor!" The world went loud, shouts, whistles. Orders ricocheted through the comms like shrapnel. Some of the men reached for me, others moved to shield him. The split was sudden, raw, bloodlines redrawn in a second. He took a step forward, jaw clenched, and I saw the calculation in his face. If I refused, everything I trusted would be used to break me. I steadied my breath. I obeyed a different law than his. The next second would decide who we were. The first shot wasn't mine. It cracked the air from somewhere behind the trucks, a reflex born from panic, and the whole street erupted. Sand kicked up, bullets sparked off the walls, and the smell of gunpowder hit like a punch. Men screamed orders over the radios, none of them making sense. I dropped behind a broken wall, yelling for them to cease fire, but my voice drowned under the chaos. He was already barking commands, pulling 2 men to cover him. "Disarm him," I heard him shout. "He's gone rogue." The word cut through me sharper than any bullet. Rogue. In a second, everything I was died in that label. I tried to explain, to shout that it was wrong, that the house was full of civilians, but nobody listened. The squad was split. Half followed instinct, half followed fear. A friend I'd trained with grabbed my arm, eyes wide with guilt. "Don't make this worse," he whispered before slamming me to the ground. Zip ties bit into my wrists, my cheek pressed into hot gravel. Around us the noise faded to the whine of distant rounds and the slow, awful silence after betrayal. When they dragged me to the convoy, I looked back. The house still stood untouched, sunlight bleeding through the curtains. Somewhere inside, a child was crying. And I realized, in their eyes, I wasn't a soldier anymore. I was the enemy. They called it an engagement with an imminent threat. That's what the report said: clean, clinical, stripped of blood and truth. The civilians became hostile elements. The chaos became necessary action, and I became the problem. The official record erased the order, erased the hesitation, erased the moment when I turned my rifle away. They rewrote everything except the guilt that stayed stuck in my chest. He was flown out 2 days later, back to headquarters for evaluation. Within a month, he had a medal pinned to his chest for bravery under fire. His face showed up on a newsletter, a photo of calm leadership under pressure. They called him a man who made the hard call. Me? I sat in a gray room under buzzing lights while men in pressed uniforms asked the same questions in different tones. They wrote "mutiny" beside my name, stamped it, and called it justice. My words were filed somewhere no one would ever read them. Every paper I signed felt like another nail sealing the coffin of what really happened. They didn't just bury the truth. They dressed it up, saluted it, and sent it home with honors. I realized then that war didn't end when the shooting stopped. It just changed uniforms. I learned fast that anger burns hot, but truth lasts. I stopped shouting and started collecting, not bullets, but paper and sound. I tracked down the medic who'd stitched me up in that cellar and coaxed a trembling recording from him about what he'd seen. I found an old villager who remembered the family's names and gave me hand-scrawled notes. I tore through bases of old reports and discovered a scrubbed line in the intel. A file stamped "confidential" with a page missing where the source had been changed. Night after night, I sat under a single lamp, lining up dates, matching radio logs to patrol times, syncing timestamps until the lie unraveled into a neat thread. I scanned documents, duplicated the radio feed where his voice ordered the house cleared, and encrypted everything to a drive I buried in a dead drop. Then I played chess. A tip to an investigative reporter who hated cover-ups, an anonymous packet to the Inspector General's office, a sealed letter to a defense attorney known for taking impossible cases. I watched cameras and combed press cycles, waited for the first tremor. I didn't set out to ruin a life for revenge. I wanted the ledger balanced, to watch a story built on theft and fear be stripped down to paper and shown for what it was. The first cracks started appearing the week the story hit the wires. The story broke like shrapnel. Headlines, hearings, a medal quietly rescinded. He stood before a board in a polished uniform while recordings of his own voice played to a room gone silent. No witnesses, echoing over and over until it no longer sounded like command, just confession. They stripped him of rank, pension, honor, all the things he'd traded his soul to keep. I watched from the back, invisible, the way ghosts watch the living. No one said my name. No one apologized. My record was never corrected, my charges never cleared. But the truth was out there, clawing through every lie he'd built. They called it justice. I called it survival. When it was over, I walked out into the rain, let it wash the desert dust off me for the first time in years. I turned my rifle once to save innocence, but I paid a different price.